Hi everyone, in this tutorial I want to show you how you can create a responsive menu button, something similar to what you can see over here. And this is going to be the last tutorial that I'm doing in 2015, so wish you a very good new year and best of luck in the new year. So alright, let's get started. First, I would like to ask you to subscribe to my channel. This way you can show your support and help so that I can, continue doing these tutorials. And hopefully I will be going through the some of the coolest things using JavaScript instead of CSS in the new year. And alright, let's get started. So the simplest markup that you can have for this element is just a div and a span within that. You can go ahead and create 3 spans, for each of these, but I'm going to use pseudo elements to create the top and the bottom one. If you don't know about pseudo elements, you want to know a little bit more, I've created tutorials beforehand that goes through, everything about pseudo elements and how to use them to enhance your user experiences. So, all right. So what we have right now is nothing. Of course, I'm gonna style the mobile nav. Um, Now I'm gonna give it a width of maybe 30 pixel and height of 30 pixel as well. And then I'm gonna choose a position relative for this one. And then for the span within that, I'm gonna do maybe I'm gonna position it to absolute. And then I'm going to width to maybe 26 pixels and height to be 2 pixels and background color to be black, right? So what you can see is something like this. Now I'm going to use the pseudo elements like mobile nav, span before and then after, but as you can see they are going to be identical, so I'm going to use the same properties over here by doing this before and then do the same thing but for the after. The difference is that since those are pseudo elements, I need to set the content to none, or not none but nothing, or empty, and then the before one, which is going to be the top one, I'm going to push it 7 pixel top, and then I'm going to use the same for the after, and I'm going to push it down 7 pixel. So you can see that we have the initial look. The only thing that I want to add is that I want to center it in my parent container vertically. So I will use the original span and then I will say top to 50%. Alright, cool. So in the meantime, I want to talk a little bit about transition and transform properties. Transition is basically a property that you apply to the element that you wanted to transition to something else. In this case, we want to transition, all of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by transitioning the middle one to a background of white so that it kind of disappears. So I will write transition background, and then maybe the duration of it want to be 0.3 seconds, and then the important thing is that I want the interaction to be click. So whenever you click on that, you want it to change the shape. So for that, for the clicking functionality, I'm using jQuery library. If you don't know about it, just Google it and see what it is. But in general, it's a library, a very powerful library that makes it easy for you to interact with the DOM elements or elements on your website in terms of like actions like clicking. So for me to add that action that I want on the click, I'm gonna add a script tag here, a script tag, and then I will do the jQuery function, and then so basically this means that apply anything that is within this function. The things that are applied here are when the whole page is loaded. So I'm gonna choose my mobile nav by its class name and then apply the click function of jQuery passing a function here and saying that this, basically this, you know, is the mobile nav. And then I will apply the toggle class function, and then I will give it a class name which is visible, meaning that whenever I clicked on this element, which is, you know, the mobile nav, I want the visible class to be applied and then removed from it, right? And then I will take advantage of that visible class to apply my transformations, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mobile nav and then my span, but when I actually want to apply the class visible here. So when the class visible is applied on top of the mobile nav, which we do here, I want the background to change color to be white, right? 000, sorry, FFF, which is white. So what happens is that if I click on this, you can see that it goes away, right? But the transition is not applied. So if I do transition, it should actually apply, but it does not. Why? Because I actually applied it to background, not background. Background. I think this is the right syntax. So now you can see that it goes away, right? And now I want the other two to sort of rotate, right? So that they shape the check mark, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually copy both of these before and after elements, and then I applied the visible, or I defined a visible class, which I applied using JavaScript here. We'll remove these guys because they're already defined in these, and then I will use a transform function here, right? And I want it to be rotate, the top one to be 45°, and then I will choose the second or the lower one, and then I choose minus 45. So I want them to actually rotate, and you can see they rotate, but the problem is that they are not you know, what we want from them to be. So we want them to, you know, shape a check mark. So in order to do that, we actually have to move a little bit. But also the most important thing is that whenever I, you know, let me just disable one of them. So the top one, you see that it rotates from the center, right? But what I want is that I want it to be rotating from the beginning of it. That's where we define the transform origin on the original, you know, class that we've defined. So here I'm going to do transform origin, and then I will set 0% and then 50%. What does this mean is that the first parameter is saying, well, like from 0%, which is the most left, to 100% where I want it to be. Of course, I want it to be the most left part of it. And then 50% is from top to bottom. So I would like it to be the center vertically, right? So now, if I rotate it, you can see that it rotates from the beginning of it, right? I apply the same transform function to the after one. So you basically get the same sort of look. If I uncomment this line, you'll see that they pretty much do the job, but you can see they are not very well aligned. So I'm going to use the other transform functions to sort of align them. In particular, I'm going to use, because you know, the rotation is fine, both of them are 45% degrees, sorry, but you have to sort of, you know, move them a little bit to the x and y axes, or vertically or horizontally, so that they look good. So this is an important thing I'm going to tell you about the transform functions. You can define multiple transform functions in the transform property, but the order or the sequence of them is very important. It's not from the beginning to the end. So if I write, for example, here, translate x 30 pixels, or sorry, like 3 pixel, right? It does not first rotate it 45 degrees and then move it. It actually first translates it 30 pixels horizontally to the right and then rotates it, you know, 45 degrees, which is pretty much what we want, right? Because if we first rotate it and then move it, you know, it's not exactly what we want. So let's see actually how it looks right now. All right, I'm going to actually apply the same thing here, translate x, which is a transform function for translating the element in x-axis horizontally. So you can see that it maybe we should actually translate y as well, maybe -2 pixel, and then here translate y on the bottom one, 2 pixel maybe. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, maybe a little bit more, right? Alright, so I'm gonna do -5 pixel and maybe 5 pixel over here. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, it's getting there, right? Alright, pretty much what we want, but we haven't actually defined any transition, so they just jump to the transform shape, right? I want it to have a transition, so what I'm going to do is that in the before and after elements I'm going to define a transition, but this time the type of transition is transform, and I want it to be 0.3 seconds for both of them, right? So let's see how it looks. So if I do this, you can see that, let me just write these correctly, transition, right? Transform and then transform, and let's see what we have. Yeah, there you go. You can see that it looks very much different and very cool. So hopefully you like this tutorial. Again, I want to emphasize of the fact that when you define the transform functions with multiple transform property with multiple transform functions, be careful that you have to actually, think about it as it's applied from the right to left rather than the first one that you define in the left to right order. So, and that's pretty much what we want. There is a tutorial I've made. It's a text-based tutorial. I'm going to put it in the description section, which kind of describes all of these things. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to my channel. Again, I wish you a happy new year and see you next year.